Have you ever wondered if the rapture has already begun, not in the skies above, but quietly within the human heart? While the world looks for earthquakes, trumpets and flashing lights, something divine may already be unfolding in silence. Hidden inside Jesus' words lies a detail so small yet so powerful it could unlock the true rapture sequence that has puzzled believers for centuries. What if the end times prophecy was never meant to terrify, but to awaken? What if that night Jesus spoke of in Luke 17:34 wasn't about darkness in the sky, but the spiritual night already spreading across our world, the quiet fading of discernment, love, and truth? And what if the midnight cry has already begun to echo, not through thunder, but through that deep restlessness you feel in your soul? For ages, theologians have drawn charts and timelines, searching for signs in the heavens. Yet the true sign of Jesus' return was hidden not in the stars, but in a whisper. Two will be in one bed, one will be taken, and the other left. Why would the Son of God choose such ordinary words to reveal something so extraordinary? Has something sacred been overlooked in plain sight? In this video, you will discover the hidden order of the rapture, revealed through the simplicity of Jesus' own language. Together, we will uncover why the night, the cry, and the separation are not symbols of fear, but steps in a divine rhythm that calls your heart to awaken. You will understand why this prophetic timeline changes everything, and why the greatest miracle of the last days won't be noise in the heavens, but light awakening in the quiet corners of your spirit. So, before the world grows darker, pause and ask yourself, have you already heard that silent call? Could it be that God's voice has been whispering your name while the world sleeps? If these questions stir something inside you, let your heart answer. Like this message, subscribe for more teachings that reveal the hidden truths of God's Word, and share in the comments, do you believe the separation has already begun? Because sometimes what seems ordinary, a night, a cry, a whisper, may be the very sound of heaven drawing near. When Jesus spoke, he often wrapped eternity inside simplicity. He didn't need thunder or spectacle to reveal divine mysteries. He used seeds, lamps, beds, and nights. Within the smallest words, heaven hid its greatest codes. And among them lies one phrase most of the world has passed over as too plain to notice. That night. He didn't say a night. He said that night. A single word that separates the ordinary from the eternal. It is a phrase that marks the beginning of a spiritual sequence, the first turning of the divine clock that leads to the rapture itself. While many search for signs in the stars, this small detail unlocks the pattern of how heaven truly moves. It tells us that God's greatest interventions often come wrapped in calm, not chaos, in whispers, not roars. Think about it. Throughout Scripture, night has always been more than a time of darkness. It is a stage where faith is tested and revelation is born. It was in the night that Jacob wrestled with God and received a new name. It was in the night that the Israelites painted lamb's blood on their doorposts and were spared from death. It was in the night that Jesus knelt in Gethsemane, sweating drops of blood, preparing for the greatest redemption in history. The night is not the absence of God. It is the place where his hidden work begins. And perhaps, beloved soul, we are living in that night now. The lights of the world still shine, the noise of cities still hums, but inside the human heart there is a deep fatigue, a spiritual weariness that no rest can cure. Love grows cold, truth is mocked, and many wander through life with full schedules but empty spirits. This is the night Jesus spoke of, the time when humanity appears awake but sleeps in its soul. The spiritual night isn't coming. It has already fallen. And in this darkness, heaven is watching to see who remains awake, not through fear, but through faith, not through panic, but through presence. Because those who keep their lamps burning, even when the world forgets why light matters, will be the ones who hear the coming cry. There's something holy about small awakenings in dark seasons. Maybe you felt it lately, that quiet restlessness, that subtle stirring inside you. It's as if your heart is saying, something is changing. You can't explain it to anyone, yet it's there, an unease that refuses to fade. That is not anxiety. It may be the beginning of spiritual alertness. It's the whisper of heaven reminding you that divine movement always begins unseen. A woman once told her story of how, after years of comfort and success, she suddenly felt lost. "I had everything," she said, "yet something inside me kept saying, 'Wake up.'" She began rising early to pray, turning off the noise, sitting quietly before dawn. Over time, she noticed her eyes opening not just to God's presence, but to the small mercies she had ignored, the song of birds, the warmth of morning light, the faces of strangers she had stopped seeing. What changed wasn't her life, but her sight. That's what spiritual awakening looks like. It begins with noticing again. When Jesus said the rapture begins at night, he wasn't describing a time of the clock. He was describing the atmosphere of the soul. The moment when people live normally, unaware that eternity is already knocking. It is in this quiet that the divine separation begins, not through earthquakes, but through discernment. Heaven moves like a surgeon's hand, dividing what is asleep from what is awake, gently but decisively. So ask yourself, not in fear, but in reflection, have you been living awake, or has routine become your lullaby? Many live inside spiritual autopilot, moving from task to task, unaware that the most sacred moments often hide in ordinary hours. The night Jesus described is not to be feared, it is to be recognized. For those who perceive it will also perceive the next sign, the midnight cry. When everything seems still, when the air feels heavy with waiting, that's when heaven speaks. Not through fire or wind, but through the cry at midnight. At midnight, Jesus said, a cry was heard. Behold, the bridegroom is coming. Those words are not poetry, they are prophecy. The cry doesn't come when people expect it. It doesn't come during daylight faith or loud revival meetings. It comes in the stillness of night when hearts grow tired and lamps burn low. The cry is mercy. It's God giving one last gentle call before the door closes. But here's the mystery. Not everyone hears it. In the parable of the 10 virgins, all were waiting for the bridegroom, all had lamps, all grew weary, but only 5 had oil in reserve. The cry came, but half were unprepared. They rose in panic, searching for what could only be built in advance. The cry didn't divide them, their preparation did. The same is true today. The spiritual cry may already be echoing through your life. It might be that subtle longing for something more than the endless cycle of work and worry. It might be the ache in your heart that no entertainment or distraction can quiet. That unease is not a curse, it's an invitation. Heaven is whispering, "Rise, refill your oil, for the time is near." Think of a young man who spent years drifting from his faith. He chased success, approval, pleasure, everything the world promised would satisfy him. Yet late one night, while scrolling through his phone, he stumbled on an old verse he hadn't read in years. "Be still and know that I am God." He said it felt like someone touched his soul. That night he prayed for the first time in a decade, and the tears that fell weren't of regret. They were release. That was his midnight cry, not thunder from heaven, but a whisper in the dark. This is how God awakens his people, not through panic, but through peace that interrupts the noise. And if you've been feeling distant, empty, or tired of the shallow noise around you, that may be your call. The cry is not to frighten you, it's to draw you home. It says, "You are still loved, there is still time." And yet, the window does not stay open forever. After the cry comes the separation. It is the most silent and sacred of all divine acts. "Two will be in one bed," Jesus said. "One will be taken and the other left." This isn't about who sleeps lighter or prays louder. It's about who lives awake within. The separation is not punishment. It's fulfillment. It's the revealing of what has already been decided in the heart. One is ready, one is not. You see it already in daily life. Two friends can walk the same road. One sees miracles, the other only coincidence. Two people can attend the same church. One feels the presence of God, the other feels bored. Two souls can share the same home. One is quietly transforming, the other remains untouched. The difference isn't visible, but it's real. Heaven is already making the distinction. And that should stir us, not to fear, but to awaken. Because it means the rapture won't surprise those who live with oil in their lamps. They won't be caught unaware, not because they know the hour, but because they have learned the rhythm of God's whisper. They recognize his footsteps even in silence. Imagine the tenderness of that moment, the divine hand reaching not to snatch in chaos, but to gather what's ready. The world might keep sleeping, but heaven will move with precision. One heart lifted, another left, both standing side by side. This is not random. It's the revelation of love discerning readiness. So how do we live ready? Not by waiting for lightning, but by walking daily in light. By letting faith breathe through our smallest choices. By cultivating love when the world grows cold. By forgiving when bitterness tempts us to harden. These are not small acts. They are drops of oil, each one preparing your lamp for the moment when the cry comes again. A woman once said, "I realized my oil wasn't prayer in public, but peace in private." That's the lesson. Your preparation isn't proven on stages, it's tested in solitude. It's how you speak when no one listens, how you forgive when no one apologizes, how you stay kind when the world forgets gentleness. That's the kind of readiness heaven recognizes. So maybe the question is not, will you hear the cry, but will your heart already be awake when it comes? Because the cry may not come from the clouds. It might come from within you, in the quiet turning of your spirit back toward the light. In every generation, God sends out this same invitation. Arise, my love, my fair one, and come away. It is the eternal song calling us from the ordinary toward the divine. The rapture is not just an event. It is the ultimate homecoming of the heart. Perhaps the separation is already beginning, not as punishment, but as preparation. Heaven is gathering the awake, calling them into deeper communion, whispering secrets to those who listen in stillness. Do you feel it too? The shifting in the air, the ache that refuses to leave? It's not despair, it's destiny. The Spirit is stirring the bride for her bridegroom. The cry is not to frighten the world, but to heal it, to remind humanity that love is still coming, that the story is not over. If these words touch you, if something in your heart feels alive again, respond not with fear, but with faith. Comment your thoughts below. Tell me, do you believe the cry has already begun? Have you felt the silent pull in your soul to awaken, to live more aware, more tender, more ready? Because maybe, just maybe, the separation has already started, not in the heavens, but in the hearts of those who choose to stay awake in the night. And those who hear the whisper will not be afraid when the trumpet finally sounds. So keep your lamp burning, keep your oil full. The night is dark, but dawn is near. Heaven's promise remains the same. Watch, therefore, for you do not know the hour your Lord is coming. And until that hour, may your soul stay awake, your faith stay warm, and your love stay alive, because even in the night, light is coming. At midnight, when the air is thick with silence and the world is fast asleep, heaven releases a sound, not of thunder, but of awakening. The midnight cry, a phrase so ancient and yet so alive, is not merely an event to come, but a divine frequency already stirring hearts. It is not shouted through loudspeakers or broadcast across news screens. It moves through whispers, through restlessness, through moments when your heart suddenly trembles for no reason. You see, the cry of heaven doesn't always roar. Sometimes it breathes. It is the voice that calls out to those whose souls still remember the music of eternity. Behold, the bridegroom comes, it says, not to frighten, but to prepare, to remind the weary that the long night is not forever. The midnight cry represents that sacred moment between darkness and dawn when heaven moves most quietly yet most powerfully. Every soul that still yearns for light can feel it. It's in the longing that awakens you at 3 in the morning when your heart aches for something more. It's in the tears that fall when a worship song suddenly feels personal. It's in the way your spirit senses that something holy is approaching, something you can't yet name, but you know is real. For centuries, preachers have spoken of the rapture as a sudden event of cosmic magnitude. Yet Jesus described it as a midnight moment, a cry that divides sleepers from seekers. That image tells us everything. This isn't about chaos, but clarity, not about fear, but faith. Heaven's final call comes not in the daylight of reason, but in the stillness of night, where faith alone can hear it. Imagine a watchman standing on a city wall in total darkness. Everyone else sleeps, but his ears are trained to the wind. Long before the first rays of dawn, he feels a change. The air cools differently, the silence thickens. That's how spiritual sensitivity works. The ones who hear the cry are not those with the loudest prayers, but those who have learned to listen in silence. A man once said that during one of the darkest seasons of his life, he woke every night at the same hour. At first, he thought it was stress. But one night, instead of scrolling through his phone, he decided to pray. He didn't know what to say, so he simply whispered, "Speak, Lord." That night, peace filled his chest like a slow sunrise. He realized later that God wasn't disturbing his sleep. He was inviting him into awakening. That, beloved, is the midnight cry in its gentlest form. And yet, not everyone rises when it sounds. The cry divides, not through judgment, but through response. Some hear it and rise to trim their lamps. Others hear it and turn over, clinging to comfort. That is how heaven discerns readiness. The cry is not about sound, it's about sensitivity. So what does this mean for you today? It means if you've been sensing a pull to draw closer, to pray again, to forgive, to simplify your life, to focus on what truly matters, listen. Don't ignore that voice. That's not coincidence. That's the echo of eternity reaching into your timeline. And maybe the question we should ask ourselves isn't, when will the rapture come? But, how am I responding to the cry? Because those who hear it and move will be among the awake, while those who delay will remain in the slumber of distraction. This leads us to one of the most tender yet sobering truths Jesus revealed: the silent separation. The scene is deceptively simple. Two will be in one bed, one will be taken and the other left. Notice how still that image is. There's no panic, no chaos, just quiet revelation. The division doesn't begin in that moment. It is merely unveiled. One heart had been preparing in silence for years. The other was living unaware. When heaven's clock strikes, the difference becomes visible. Think of it this way. Two candles burning in the same room. Both flicker with light, but only one has oil left when the night deepens. The other fades, not because it was unloved, but because it didn't prepare. This is the truth few want to face. The separation isn't God's cruelty, it's the consequence of our choices. We see this separation even now, in quiet ways. A couple sits side by side. One longs for deeper purpose, the other drifts further into apathy. Two friends attend the same church. One is transformed by every word, the other critiques the preacher's tone. Two hearts experience the same world, but one hears the whisper of heaven, while the other hears only noise. The line between the taken and the left begins here, in the daily posture of the soul. And that realization should not bring fear, it should bring focus. Because if the separation begins invisibly, that means there is still time to awaken. The same God who calls one heart to rise also extends his hand to the other, saying, "Come, the night is passing." There's a man named Peter who used to describe his conversion not as a moment, but as a migration, from noise to stillness, from survival to surrender. "It wasn't that God suddenly took me," he said. "It was that he had been separating me for years, pulling me out of habits, relationships, patterns that dulled my spirit." The rapture, he believed, is the final act of what God begins in private, the gentle untangling of his people from the world's web. So maybe that's what's happening in your life right now. Maybe the disappointments, the delays, the detours, they're not punishments. They're part of the silent separation, drawing you closer to what's eternal, loosening your grip on what fades. Heaven is preparing your heart for flight. But here's the paradox. The more heaven separates you, the lonelier it may feel. When you wake while others sleep, isolation can feel like exile. But don't mistake solitude for abandonment. When the bridegroom comes, he looks for those who kept watch in the night, those who didn't let weariness steal their flame. And that brings us to a truth that pulses like a heartbeat through all of Scripture, the divine sequence: night, cry, separation. It is not random. It's a rhythm, a sacred choreography that reveals how God moves. First, the night. Darkness, confusion, a world spiritually asleep. Then, the cry, the awakening call to the few who are still sensitive. Finally, the separation, the revealing of those who truly belong to the light. Every season of history echoes this pattern. Before the flood, there was darkness, then Noah's warning, then the door closing. Before the Exodus, there was Egypt's night, then the cry of deliverance, then the parting of the sea. Before Jesus' resurrection, there was the tomb's silence, then the angel's call, then the great separation between death and life itself. God never changes his rhythm. And today, that same sequence unfolds again, not in the sky first, but in hearts. The world drifts into moral night, values twisted, love frozen, truth blurred. Then comes the cry, a surge of spiritual hunger sweeping across nations. People begin to seek meaning again, to turn off their noise, to ask questions about eternity. And soon after, the separation, the awakening of those whose hearts burn quietly for what's real. This isn't theory, it's testimony. All around, people are experiencing it without realizing its name. A businessman feels an inexplicable urge to step back from success and spend time with his family. A young woman suddenly loses interest in shallow pleasures and begins journaling prayers she never used to pray. A teacher feels drawn to speak kindness where gossip ruled. Each small awakening is part of heaven's pattern, the cry being answered by watchful souls. So, when you feel yourself being pulled toward peace, don't resist it. When you sense the need to simplify, to pray, to disconnect from the noise, obey it. These are the footsteps of the bridegroom moving closer. The cry at midnight was never meant to be heard by ears alone. It's felt in the spirit. And perhaps the most beautiful part of this sequence is that it ends not in destruction, but in reunion. The cry divides, yes, but it also invites. It calls out across the night, "Awake, my beloved, the hour has come." The true miracle of the rapture is not escape, it's union. Heaven is not rescuing us from earth, it's reclaiming what belongs to light. When that final separation happens, it will not be a violent snatching, but a tender gathering, the fulfillment of every promise whispered through generations. Maybe, even now, as you read this, your heart feels a warmth, a quiet realization that something in your spirit is shifting. That's how awakening begins. It's not thunder in the clouds, it's the soft throb of faith returning home. So let the night come. It cannot last forever. Let the cry sound. It will not go unheard. Let the separation unfold. It is mercy in disguise. And as you live in this divine rhythm, ask yourself, how is heaven calling me tonight? Is my lamp trimmed? Is my oil full? Am I awake in the silence? Leave your reflections in the comments below. Do you believe the cry at midnight has already begun? Have you noticed the gentle ways God is separating light from shadow in your own life? Your story may be the sign someone else has been waiting to see. Because while the world sleeps, the bride is rising. While others drift in the dark, hearts like yours are hearing the whisper, "The bridegroom comes." And those who listen now will not be left behind when heaven finally opens its gates of dawn. Stay awake, dear soul. The sequence is already in motion. The night has fallen, the cry is echoing, and soon, very soon, the separation will reveal who was listening all along. Until that hour, keep your flame alive, for every flicker in the dark is proof that you still belong to the light. The rhythm of heaven never falters. Everything God does follows a sacred sequence: night, cry, separation. But beyond the separation comes understanding. For when Jesus unveiled this divine sequence, he wasn't revealing terror. He was revealing timing. Each phase has a purpose, a spiritual logic, a reason why heaven moves the way it does. And the more you grasp it, the more peace fills your heart. First comes the night, the darkness that humbles humanity. Then the cry, the awakening that calls the watchful to rise. Finally, the separation, the unveiling of hearts already aligned with eternity. This is not chaos. It's choreography. The rapture sequence isn't about sudden panic, but about divine order, like the heartbeat of creation moving toward reunion. When you begin to understand this pattern, you stop fearing the end, because you see that what God calls the end is often just the beginning of something sacred. It's not an interruption, it's an invitation. The end times prophecy becomes less about catastrophe and more about restoration. The spiritual awakening of this age is not punishment, it's preparation. Let me tell you a story. There was a man named Daniel, a quiet soul who had walked away from faith years ago. One evening, as the sun was setting, he found himself watching the horizon turn from gold to violet. It felt like time itself was slowing. For a moment, he sensed something deeper than beauty. A message. "The night is coming." Those words echoed in his heart. He didn't know where they came from, but they wouldn't leave. Over the next weeks, he began waking early, praying again, talking to God as though rediscovering an old friend. Months later, when tragedy struck his family, he was ready, not because he predicted it, but because his heart had been prepared in the quiet before the storm. That's how heaven moves. The cry comes long before the lightning. And this is what Jesus was teaching us. The rapture doesn't start with chaos, it starts with clarity. The spiritual night is not a signal of doom, it's the womb of awakening. The midnight cry is the call that separates sleepers from seekers. The separation is not random, it's the fruit of years of unseen preparation. This is the divine sequence at work, a hidden map of mercy. But in this map, there is one essential element, the oil. You've probably heard about it in the parable of the 10 virgins. 5 were wise, 5 were foolish. All had lamps, all had light, all waited for the bridegroom. The only difference was the oil. And in that oil lies the secret of survival in the dark. The oil of readiness is not a symbol of fear, it's a symbol of intimacy. Oil represents what burns quietly in the heart when no one is watching. It's your prayer life, your forgiveness, your devotion, your tenderness, your humility. It's the invisible substance that keeps your light alive when the world's applause fades. Many confuse activity with readiness. They think being loud about faith means being full of faith. But oil isn't made in the spotlight. It's pressed in silence. It's formed in tears you never post about, in sacrifices no one sees, in moments when you choose love over pride, grace over judgment, patience over panic. A young woman once said, "I used to think faith meant always doing something for God, but now I see it's about letting Him do something inside me." That's the oil talking. You can attend 1,000 church services and still be dry, but one night of surrender, 1 hour of genuine repentance can fill your lamp for a lifetime. And that's what Jesus meant when he said, "The wise virgins took oil in their vessels." They didn't just light lamps, they built reserves. They didn't wait for chaos to start preparing. They prepared when everything still seemed normal. Today, the world is obsessed with speed, performance, and perfection. But heaven is searching for endurance, depth, and devotion. The wise know that spiritual readiness isn't made in a day, it's made in the details. So, if you've felt weary, don't lose heart. Maybe you're in the pressing season, the stage where God is making your oil. Maybe He's stripping distractions, closing old doors, or asking you to wait longer than you expected. That's not punishment, that's preservation. He's preparing you for the rapture sequence, for the moment when the cry comes and your lamp must burn bright. And that leads us into the greatest danger of all: autopilot faith. Many believers today aren't cold, they're comfortable. They don't reject God, they've simply forgotten how to stay awake. They go through spiritual motions, prayers that sound right but feel empty, songs sung without presence, words repeated without power. It's like walking through a dream, awake but not alive. That's what Jesus warned about when he said, "The night will come while men are eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage." In other words, life will look normal. The world won't stop. It will keep scrolling, shopping, and streaming, unaware that eternity has already stepped into motion. We live in the age of distraction. The glow of screens has replaced the glow of lamps. But here's the truth: distraction is the thief of discernment. The enemy doesn't always attack with storms. Sometimes he lulls with comfort. He doesn't always roar. Sometimes he sings lullabies. And that's why the call to watchfulness is so urgent. Watching isn't about paranoia, it's about presence. It means living aware, living soft, living open to God's voice in the middle of ordinary life. Think of Mary in the Gospel of Luke. While others were rushing, she sat at Jesus' feet. She didn't need to perform, she needed to perceive. Jesus said, "Mary has chosen the better part." That's oil. That's what it means to stay awake. There's a story of an old man who used to sit on his porch every evening watching the horizon. Someone asked him, "Why do you sit there so long?" He smiled and said, "I'm waiting for my Lord. I want him to find me watching." That is the essence of living awake. Not fearful, not frantic, but faithful. The tragedy of autopilot faith is not that it's sinful, but that it's numb. It's the slow death of sensitivity. And yet, there's hope. The same God who calls out, "Wake up," also whispers, "I can still restore your flame." So if your lamp has dimmed, if your oil feels low, take heart. It's not too late to refill. You don't need to chase signs, you need to seek silence. You don't need a calendar of prophecy, you need communion. You don't need fear, you need fire. In this moment, wherever you are, you can pause, breathe, and say, "Lord, fill my lamp again." And He will. Because the spiritual awakening Jesus spoke of isn't reserved for saints. It's available for seekers. Every breath you take is another chance to awaken. Every sunrise is another whisper from heaven. Keep your oil full, for I am near. Maybe this is why so many hearts today are restless. Maybe this is the generation of the midnight cry, a world asleep, and yet countless souls awakening one by one. Let that include you. Let this be your awakening moment. And now I ask you gently, do you think the oil of readiness in your lamp is full, or has routine quietly emptied it? Do you feel the warmth of his presence daily, or has the coldness of comfort crept in? Reflect on this with love, not guilt. For the purpose of conviction is never condemnation. It's invitation. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. How do you keep your faith alive in a world so loud? How do you guard your oil when distractions are everywhere? Your story could light another person's lamp. Because the truth is, no one can give you their oil, but everyone can inspire you to keep making your own. The night is deepening, yes, but the bridegroom has not forgotten his bride. And for every heart that stays awake, every lamp that still burns, there will come a dawn so bright that darkness will never return. So keep watch, keep hope, keep love alive, for even in the darkest hour, the light of readiness still shines. And when the final cry echoes through the night, may your heart be found burning, steady, alive, and ready. And now, as the final words settle like a soft twilight over your heart, let this truth rest within you. The rapture was never meant to be a message of fear, but of awakening. It is not a thunderclap to frighten the world. It is a whisper of love calling the faithful home. Everything Jesus spoke was layered with mercy, with the tender rhythm of a father longing for his children to remember their way back to the light. The divine sequence, night, cry, separation, is not the story of destruction, but of transformation. It is heaven's reminder that even in the darkest hour, God still moves quietly, purposefully, with hands that heal, not harm. The night may seem endless, but morning is already written into its fabric. The cry may sound haunting, but it's a melody of hope to every soul who still listens. The separation may feel sorrowful, but it's also the gathering of hearts ready to rise. When you look around at this world, the chaos, the confusion, the exhaustion, it's easy to think we've been abandoned. But no, dear soul, this is not abandonment, it is alignment. The spiritual night we live in is not proof of God's absence, it is the stage for his return. And within this silence, heaven is watching the lamps of his people, searching for those who still burn with love, humility, and faith. Maybe you've walked through shadows lately. Maybe you've felt that heaviness, that sense that something inside you is flickering, that your oil is running low. Let me tell you, there is no shame in that. Even the brightest lamps need refilling. The Lord never asked you to burn endlessly. He asked you to stay open. When you bring him your emptiness, he fills it with grace. When you bring him your tears, he turns them into light. Remember this, Jesus never promised the absence of darkness, but he promised the presence of light within it. That's why he said, "You are the light of the world." Even when the world sleeps, even when faith feels fragile, your light still matters. Your quiet acts of love, your silent prayers, your moments of forgiveness, these are the oil drops heaven counts as precious. The midnight cry is sounding even now, not from the clouds, but from within hearts all over the earth. God is awakening his people, one whisper, one stirring, one heartbeat at a time. You are part of that awakening. Your longing for meaning, your desire for peace, your hunger for truth, They are all proof that your spirit still remembers the bridegroom's voice. And when he comes, it won't be chaos that fills the sky. It will be glory. It will be the kind of silence that makes angels sing. It will be the reunion of heaven and earth, the marriage of time and eternity, the embrace of a father and his returning children. So keep your flame alive, keep your faith tender, keep your eyes lifted toward the horizon. Because one day soon, what you've been waiting for will arrive, not in noise, but in light, not in fear, but in fullness. Maybe you feel small in this vast, spinning world. But remember, the greatest movements of heaven often begin in the quietest souls. The spiritual awakening of this generation doesn't start on stages. It begins in rooms where someone kneels in silence and whispers, "I'm ready, Lord." It begins with you. And if this message has found you in a dark moment, let it remind you, you are not forgotten. You are being refined, not rejected. Every delay has meaning. Every silence has purpose. The same God who whispered to Noah in the rain, to Moses in the desert, to Mary in her fear, he whispers now to you, the night is almost over. The bridegroom is near. The story isn't about escape, it's about return. The rapture is not the end of love, it's its fulfillment. Heaven's cry is not to leave earth behind, but to bring hearts back home. That is the hidden beauty of Jesus' words. The rapture sequence is not a countdown, it's a call to communion. So as this message closes, let it not be an ending, but a beginning, a call to stay awake, to live with passion, to love deeply, to forgive freely, and to walk gently in the light of grace. If this message touched your soul, if it stirred something real inside you, I invite you to keep walking with me on this journey of revelation and renewal. Like this message, subscribe to this channel and share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me, do you believe the midnight cry has already begun? Have you felt the gentle pull of heaven calling you to awaken? Let's talk, heart to heart, in the quiet place of faith. And if this message brought light to your soul in a dark moment, I invite you to support with a little energy so I can continue creating videos that share God's word and bring healing to hearts around the world. Every contribution, no matter how small, is priceless. It helps keep this flame alive. Thank you truly for being part of this light. May your lamp never go out. May your oil never run dry. May your heart always stay tender to the whisper of heaven. And when that final trumpet sounds and the skies unfold, may you be among those whose light still shines, steady, peaceful, and radiant with love. Father, bless every soul who hears these words. Let the restless find rest. Let the fearful find peace. Let the weary find hope. Awaken us gently, Lord, and keep us ready for the day when shadows fade and only light remains. Amen. Until that day, keep shining, beloved one. The night is fading, the dawn is near,